session of today's conference. We've got Let's Talk About Workplace Change, which is an interview between Mark and Jennifer Bryan. Mark is Director of Insight for MillerKnoll. He's going to interview Speaker and Director of Change and Leadership, Jennifer Bryan. The conversation is going to explore, hopefully, some challenges of navigating the new landscape. And we've heard lots about the new landscape and the challenges for future organisations, maybe the Dow and MEs, as we've just seen. Mark, Jennifer, welcome, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for staying. I normally empty a room when it gets to the end, so thank you very much for those that are staying. Interesting day of talks. A lot of today involved in the past or currently or in the future change. It becomes a very, very big issue, and recently Jennifer did a talk for our webinar series, which was really enlightening, and Jennifer is really well placed to speak about change, having written a book which is called Leading People Through Change. So you need to put your microphone.
Oh, I did.
Yep, okay. So, and Peter Cheese talked about the current context, but I'm going to ask you, Jennifer, tell me a little bit now about the context that we're in and the part that change is playing and the environment we're in for change in a post-pandemic world.
Yes, so Peter kind of set the scene really quite nicely for me in regards to the change context. And many times when businesses are embarking on change, they think about the thing that they want to get done. You know, whatever that is, whether it be a technology change or a workplace change or reducing our portfolio, whatever that may be. But very rarely do they take a look at what I call the change context. What is the environment, the context in which they're trying to do this change? What is going on politically, not just externally within the country and the world, but also internally? What is going on from the environmental perspective? What are we trying to do and achieve? Are we trying to take on board all the UN sustainability goals? So on and so, you know, you can use your STEEP, you can use your PESTLE and all the rest of it, but that is what actually helps us understand the change context externally. And then we have the organizational development tools to really understand the internal influencing factors, and all of that has an impact on change. And that's what we need to start first thinking about. As a result of all of that, how are our people thinking and feeling right now? Just about the world, life, work. Much less than how they might think and feel and perceive the change. And it's based on that information that I would argue is how we start to build our change strategies, our approaches, our training plans, communication plans, yada, 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 yada.
So thank you. Your book is called Leading People Through Change,
Yes.
rather than change management. So it's about leading people. Tell me why you called it Leading People Through Change and what part do leaders play in that change process?
Well, I call it leading people because at the end of the day, change doesn't happen without the people. It's as simple as that. And at the end of the day, as managers and leaders, we are trying to lead them through that journey of change. And I say journey, and a lot of us have heard how change is a journey or a story. It's not a destination. But the question is, how do we want to travel? And what story do we want to share? And that's what our role as leaders and managers within organizations actually need to focus and concentrate our efforts, our skills, our thoughts, our activities, our doings, is on that element through leading the people through the change. So that's really where it comes from.
Is there anyone particularly who owns change of what we've seen today? Who owns that change, or is it a shared responsibility?
The people, at the end of the day. They're the ones that are doing it, therefore they're the ones that own it. They are going to decide whether it gets done or it doesn't get done. They're the ones that are going to decide to what level and to what degree it's going to get done. Now, do Do we need a sponsor, and do we executive sponsor who is active and visible? And I talk a lot about that and have done so, and so forth. And do we need then the leaders of change? And the two should not be the same. But I won't go down that bit of my platform there. But at the end of the day, it's the people that have to do it. So therefore, they're the ones that've got to own it. So we as leaders need to enable them, understand their world, what's going on for them, and as a result of that, allow them to actually make it happen. I mean, one of the big things when I work with organizations, I said, look, I'm just a consultant. You know, I'm here for a very finite period of time. This is not my baby. This is your baby. My job is to help you with this. You know, I'm the health visitor at the end of the day. I'm not the parent. You know, that's a very big difference. So many people think, oh, you're coming to do this. No, I'm coming to help you do this. My job is to make me redundant in just a couple of months. I need to go. I'm going.
Thank you. And by the way, you're going to be asking questions as well. So think of those really good questions. So thank you for that. You talked about sponsorship.
Yeah.
Is there a process that you go through? Is there particular traits of a good sponsor that you look for when you choose who that sponsor be? Or is it the sponsors choose themselves?
Active and visible. Those are the two biggest traits of a sponsor and a leader of change, active and visible. When it comes to looking for the sponsor, in my opinion, for whatever it's worth, it needs to be the person who can create the level of influence that is needed for the degree of change in which you're trying to implement. So if you're trying to implement an organizational-wide change, you need that sponsor, that executive sponsor, to have the influence across the whole organization, and not be the person who I would say, which many times ends up being the sponsor, the IT director, the HR director, whoever it may be, and who then has to go to their colleagues and say, hey, can you help me out with this? Because then that's them doing you a favor. And as a result of that, maybe that's high on their priority list, but more likely it's not quite so high as you want it to be. So you need someone who has the influence to actually affect the people of the change that is the degree of the change you're trying to do, if that makes sense.
And during your talk, I remember you talking about you've got to understand the why of change,
Yes.
the purpose of change. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that affects the process.
Right. There are three key questions I ask every potential client, and lately some of them seem to have been a bit intimidated by it. One is, why are you trying to do it? Because I don't know if any of you guys have either experienced it yourselves with your own children or nieces or nephews, or have just seen it in the store. But if you've tried to get a 2-year-old to do something they don't want to do, and that you're just saying, go and do this, or any child or any person, they're not going to do it unless they know why they've got to do it. You know, the chances of them doing it aren't very big. And the thing is, we as adults aren't any different. You know, as soon as they closed down a couple of the entrances at Oxford Street at Oxford Circus a couple of times, like, why are you doing that? That just then funnels us all down to this one place. You know, we're already going, why? So we have to articulate why it is we're doing this change. Secondly, why now? Why does it have to be now rather than 6 months ago or in 6 months' time? What is the criticality of it? And thirdly, why should anyone care about your change? And what I mean by that is the person who is the furthest away from the decision-making room. So I coined it as the in-person and mind approach. Simone Fitter-Jarvis, if you guys know her and read her book, she uses the voice of the people. I use the avatars, it's Jane and Tay or Sam and Norwich. The person who's the furthest from the decision-making room. Why should they care about this? What's in it? It's not just the with them, it's why should they care? Why should this matter? What is it about it that actually is going to have an impact on them? And hence, because they're the ones that have to own it, as we've already talked about, they're the ones that are going to have to do it. So hence, why should they care about it? Because if they don't care about it, They're not going to do those other two things.
I'm going to ask one more question, I'm going to open it up to the audience as well. So you talked about timing. Is there a good timeline for change? If we're moving people into a new office in a year's time or 2 years' time, when should communication start? When does that change process start?
There's a level of organizational readiness that has to be determined. And that is going to be different for every organization, for the different types of changes you're trying to do. It's the context of the change will also help you decide, is this the right timing? And then as soon as you are looking at starting to do something, that's when you need to start planning that people side of change. You don't sit there and go, oh, let's go, we've got this going wrong, or we want to do this, or we want to fix this, or we want to improve this. And we talk about that in our ivory tower. We go away, think about the question, and then come back with an answer in our ivory tower. And then we're like, okay, well, based on that, yeah, we'll go with that solution. Let's start mobilize a team and blah, blah. No. At the end, it's very much about understanding what is going on, why, where are you trying to get to, why are you trying to get there, who do you want to be as an organization, how do you want people to think about you, how do you want people to feel about you, and by people, how do you want the people who work with you, how do you want to feel, how do you want your suppliers to feel, how do you want your clients to feel about you, the industry, people, the public, what is it that you really want? And once you've decided that and you understand the change context, then you can decide, all right, well, do we have everything in place to help this, to support this? Or actually, do we have a whole bunch of crap down here? We're going to have to fix that first before we can even go down this road. So is there a right time of change? Yes, there's a right time for the organization. But exactly what that golden number or date is, that's totally open for grabs.
Okay, any questions at all about the leadership? Thank you very much.
Yeah, it strikes me that the biggest people-centered change that's happened over the last 3 years has been the wholesale move to remote working, with a lot of organizations going to home-based working, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, pretty much overnight, my organization being no exception. That happened very rapidly, no project plans, no change plans, and in the main, very successful. A lot of research is showing that generally people are more productive, and it happened quite quickly and quite effectively. The second biggest workforce change I think we've seen in the last 3 years is almost the reversal of that, the move to hybrid working, where people are remote and in the office sometimes, which has been a lot more structured, a lot more planned, a lot more change work into it, but reports are saying not as successful, with employees perhaps not sort of fully adopting it. We've heard from the talks this morning it not being lots of sort of teething issues, etc. And I wonder, why do you think that's the case?
Right, so there's a couple of things there. And one is, I would say, how successful when we suddenly went off into the remote working. I think there's a big debate to be had there, to be perfectly honest. In the big scheme of things, there is a lot of successes, but we also are well aware of the amount of mental health issues that really came up. We know there was a lot of abuse that happened, more abuse that happened in the home. That's majorly on the increase, and as a result, there's a lot of problems there. There's a lot of adolescents and children, major mental health. Suddenly the level of bulimia and anorexia, and so that's hugely on the rise, and that really got exacerbated during the pandemic. So how successful? I think that's still very much a debate from that point, and I think it's about perspective in regards to the level of success. But when we look at the structure, and what I think you're picking up is the lack of structure of change just suddenly sprung upon us and we got to suck it up and move on, versus a more structured and formalized, trying to put some patterns and structure in place and rules and all the rest of it in change. That is very much dependent on the change context, because if we look at the success, if we look at it from, as you've coined it, the success of the unstructured, we all just got sent, we were all had to be at home. Construction totally shut down. Every construction site across the UK was completely shut down. all of the offices were mandated to completely and utterly shut down. They weren't allowed. They had, if people, and then there was the revolt. Hang on, we've got these people who've got to be here. And then suddenly the government said, oh, well, they have to have a letter then to show the police that they actually have to be there. You know, and suddenly we weren't allowed to go out anywhere. And loads of people got ticketed if they suddenly met up with, I remember the two women who met up for coffee, but they drove to get to a particular site to go for their walk, and that was decided that was completely legal. So there was a lot of different elements that were taken into consideration with that. And so the change is from a context arena when we all just have to get on and do it. There is an element of suck it up and move on. But that's because there wasn't any other option either really available to a great majority of us. And there was also the whole sense in regards to change of doing this as the greater whole. Let's do this for each other so we all stay healthy, so we all stay safe. And as a result, we ended up with the big clapping that happened with the NHS and so forth. So having that huge vision of we're all in this, we're doing it together, and we're doing this for our safety and for our health and for our parents' safety and the people we love and care about, that has a huge power from a vision perspective and a why, that whole why perspective that we mentioned earlier. And that's why I would argue that a lot of people got really ticked off when Fabulous BJ we found out that he had a lot of parties when the rest of us were doing what we were trying to do as a greater good in, you know, just like in wartime, keep calm and carry on.
And I remember you saying in your talk, actually, that we get so focused on the success. You know, so 70% of people are happy. What about the other 30%? It's kind of those we kind of, oh yeah, well, you know, that's really important. Sorry, you were going to do a follow-up there, so feel free to do so.
It was just a thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Question? Thank you very much, a lady here.
Thank you for that insight. I'm guessing I'd like to know if you've got any examples of when you've seen behavioural change measured really well. You know, just harping on to that bit about, you know, how we know we've been successful. I'm in a team where we're moving away from less project management based benefits and success measures, but with ways of working and using workspaces effectively, it becomes a little bit less tangible to understand, you know, here's where we started, here's where we want to be, and kind of here's where we are. So any tips you might have for me?
Yeah, ask the people, what do they think and what do they feel about everything right now? So when I was working on a corporate real estate workplace change, this is before the pandemic a few years ago, and this particular technology organization actually wanted to do the opposite of what a lot of people were doing before the pandemic, which is attract people back into the office, which is what people are trying to do now, because hardly anyone showed up. I did a video of a couple of days of the workplace, and there was about 225 desks. It was a chicken coop, but there was probably about 15 people in there. And as a result, I would always say, Sam over there is the low man on totem pole. And, you know, it's like, what's the benefit of him coming in when he's got literally 20 desks around him? They're completely empty. He might as well be home in his, you know, dressing gown and slippers on the calls and everything else. So it was talked about before how the office always needed to have a value. There always needed to be a value to come into the office. And so what I did in that particular situation is, first of all, ask people, and yes, it was a survey at the time, and then we had some focus groups and also did the executives and, you know, all the different hierarchies that you do, and that was applicable in that organization. We asked them how they felt. We asked them what did they think, and the words that came up at the time was, I'm ashamed. I avoid it. I'd rather go to my client's office than this office, wherever that may be, and that may be on the complete other side of town. There was a lot of those type of words that came out. And so we got that and were able to use that to redesign something that was completely new, completely different, shook things up for them, and suddenly 6 months later, we were able to then do that exact same survey again and the exact same measurements, and we improved the satisfaction by 146%. And suddenly people said, I love coming here, I'm really proud, I'm happy to bring my client in. It was just a completely 180-degree turnaround. So the big things, ask them.
Marcus.
Hi, it's Marcus from Work and Place. You sort of covered, actually, my question. It's about enabling work and those 3 whys that you asked. Because from my experience anyway, when you ask a potential client those 3 questions, you go, oh, I wouldn't start here. You know, you realize there's a lot of enabling work. I just wanted to get your insight to that, because I think people hire change consultants and of their ilk and think that it's like the magic bullet. You come in, walk on stage left, you do your thing, as you say, you walk out. But actually, I wanted to hear your view about what happens if the starting point is not now. You've got a whole lot of work to do before you actually go on that journey.
Yeah, oh, exactly. I've advised that for clients. I did it last year. I was working with a law firm, and they brought me in actually in July, and they said, oh, we're all gung-ho, and they're ready to do this. And I just did just with a few weeks, and I just went, yeah, you don't need me yet. And this is what I said, you haven't even defined this. You need to define this, this, and this. And once you've got that, then let's talk. And I said, and as a result, I went away for a little while. And I'm very happy to do exactly that. I think it needs to be right for the organization. There's no point in trying to, what I would call, flog a dead horse. If the organization isn't ready, you're going to end up with that much more resistance. You're going to end up with that much more barriers. You're going to end up with a lot lower adoption levels, and you're going to end up with a lot of unhappy people at the end of the day who might have been okay with it if you just did it at the right time and in the right way for them. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. You used the word resistance, and I remember on your talk you said expect resistance and know it's okay.
Yeah.
How do you handle resistance?
It depends on where it's coming from. So resistance is natural, it's human, it's fine. If Nigel was to sit there and say, right, everybody at the end of this gets 1,000 pounds, and which he hasn't. But, at the very first thing, when we say that, we'd go, no, he's not. That's the very first thought that goes in our head. If anyone's won the lottery or anything's go, do I have the numbers? Are they right? Are they? Are they? That's a level of resistance at the end of the day. It's natural, it's human, it's fine. It's really no big deal. What we need to understand is, where is the resistance coming from? Why is it happening? Or actually, I would rather say, why do you think it might happen? Because it's about planning for it. When you understand the change context, when you understand what people are thinking and feeling, and what they then might think and feel about the change, you've got the answers there for it. Well, as a result of that, they may do this, they may do that, they may say this, they may say that. Then you can say, right, so what can we do to mitigate that? What do we need to say? How do we need to say it? What do we need to do? How do we need to do it in order to actually mitigate that and deal with that? So to me, it's not about being afraid that's going to happen, because it is, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's about understanding where it's coming from and where it may come from and why it may come from that direction, and then manage it.
You've used the word thinking and feeling quite a lot. Yeah. And I go back to Peter Cheese when he said, you have too many PowerPoints, not enough Excel spreadsheets. And measuring thinking and feeling is not easy. Is the way that you do it?
Yeah, I ask them. It's genuinely not rocket science. It's about asking people. People love to talk. You ask someone a question about what they think and feel and genuinely ask them the question, not, hey, how's it going? And which is many times we're not really that bothered with the answer. But if you say, hey, how's it going? And wait, people are like, oh, she really wants to know what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling, or she really wants to know what's going on with me. That's really powerful. And it actually opens up an enormous amount of doors. And people want to then tell you, but they only want to tell you if they think you really want to know.
Thank you. Jennifer's going to be staying around for the book session a little bit later as well. I absolutely recommend you buy the book. I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jennifer, great insights. Do connect with Jennifer on LinkedIn. And I nearly always end my talks with this quote. Herman Miller, who's a part of MillerKnoll, was founded by a guy called DJ Dupree. And he said, and it comes back to what Perry was talking about, in the long run, businesses and business leaders should never be judged on their products or their profits, but on their impact on humanity. And change is all about having good impacts. Jennifer, thank you very much.
Thank you.